Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. No introduction, working towards our definition. So, if things are going sideways, which way are they going? Well, they're not progressing. So again, pointing out linguistic phrases, usage of language, showing what the logic is, connecting that to physics, looking for what is sensorality. Why do we censor things? And proving linguistically that you spell censorship from sentience, meaning if I censor something, if I blur out nudity, or if I censor my words around certain people, that is censorship with an S. And same way you have senses with an S, censorship is with an S. We've proven the consistency of language, so obviously words with the same letters are going to start. Words with the same letters at the first letter are more similar than without the same letter. So just moving forward. We talked about and the definite articles being limits. We went through that last episode. So again, just trying to piece together now the syllability of this axiom, breaking down a bunch of different words and showing how they combine into sensorality, giving us our new logical definition. Asensorality is compulsory. Again, showing that soar, compulsory is the same. Compulsion, my pool table does not have compulsion. So again, showing that base soar, iterating through different words. Compulsion is sorial. I referenced a trivial derivation of cosine or sine, but we've already driven senility, sine, what a sine is. So sensorality contains the sine function. And so we can just start proving things linguistically based off of existence. Because this word exists to represent this thing, and everyone knows what this thing is, this physical phenomenon, this process, all of the words are relative, but they're solidified because they're related to one another. I don't have a good example off the top of my head, but just meaning words are relative, but they're solidified in their definitions, because it's like, again, if you're one person and you're at a concert and the crowd starts to go crazy, you can't fight that momentum. You're just one little piece and you're just kind of, waving along with your people. But we can start our proofs now with just existence. This thing exists, and it's in this big system. You're the person in the big system at a concert. A word is a single individual in a big system as well of language. And so those definitions are solidified, but they are still relative. And so, meaning they just relate to one another. That's literally what a definition is. And so we can just start with existence, right? Sine exists. The word sine represents this mathematical thing. If you have a right triangle and you want to find an angle, and you take the adjacent side of that right triangle and divide it by the hypotenuse, you get that's what sine calculates, a ratio of an adjacent line segment to the hypotenuse of a right triangle. And so we're working with this in logical generality completely, but the word sine exists. Point being is it doesn't matter if you called it sine or TV or rock, it's that this word represents this physical process. And so we can just start with sine. So what's the derivative of sine, right? Cosine. So what's the derivative of cosine? Negative sine. And you can't have a negative. Negative doesn't mean anything mathematically. And nobody would debate that. They would just say it means direction. So again, we're differentiating what's mathematical ontology, what's physical ontology, what's biological ontology, what's computer, what's innovation, what's technology. All of these different categories have different breadth of application. And so it's a complete, but it's trivial because sine exists. That's where we start. And then you just have the derivative, which gives you a positive quantity relating to a physical process, a reciprocal. Again, just whether your wave starts at, pi over 2 radians, or if it starts at 0 or 2 pi radians. And so, but once you take the derivative of cosine and you get negative sine, that is proving that sine is the base of cosine, which it is, because sine, cosine. But again, we're proving all of these mathematical operators. But just the fact that it produces negativity proves that it is the base. Sine and soar. So S-I-N, S-O-R-E. Again, we have these fundamental dichotomistic pairs. We went through that a bunch. But again, we can just chop off the S and the E of those two words, and now we have in and or. So really fundamentally what we're doing in the same way you learn a new language and the first thing that jumps out of you is the prepositions, we're differentiating the true use of prepositions, which as a native speaker of any language, you don't really think about, right? If I withhold something, am I without, within, into, right? There's all of these different prepositions where they're just amalgamations. They literally just stuff words together. It's like the German language where they just stuff things together. And so, right, they say nothing close enough only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. No, it counts in language too. If you just blurt out a bunch of the words, it doesn't have to be the right syntax, the right grammar, the right nouns. If it's just overall kind of the right meaning, you're going to transmit what you want to say. And so, but point being is we've reduced a logical concept, sign, clearly defined mathematically, sore, clearly defined physically, if your muscles are sore. We take away those S and the E. Why can we do that? Again, the S is like a filler thing, the E, you just can. So but you reduce down to in or. And so again, we're showing the complete reduction of these words, we're building them back up and expanding further. And on that expansion, when we expand back out, after we contract, that's when we get our new definition. The universe expands, our definitions expand. Speciality relates to exponentiality, to that sh sound. Remember, speciality or syllability preserves pronunciation. And then the letters differentiate that because you don't have physical context. But the sh, the ci, and the sh, the ti, that's clearly the same syllable or related. We can state some proportionalities that pretty trivially, what is temperature? It is not vibration, but temperature is proportional to vibration. When I'm sitting there cooking my sausages, I might even put it in a little clip, I might not, right? There's a current going through a coil. That coil is burning off that energy. That momentum's moving. It burns off some energy inefficiently, comes off as heat. It heats up my pan. That makes my sausages cook. And so the temperature goes higher, the more the vibration goes higher. And so trivially, temperature is proportional to vibration. What is the relationship of temperature and momentum? Trivially, temperature is also proportional to momentum, right? If I'm moving at 1 meters per second, or if I'm moving 1,000 meters per second, there's going to be more heat emitted once I collide with something at the higher velocity. So momentum and temperature are proportional. Does temperature move? No. Temperature moderates. Temperature is the medium. Okay, again, working to physically expand the second law of thermodynamics. Tempering. What it is a temper, right? I was scapegoated as a kid. I was always told I have a temper. No, I was just being tortured. But nobody cares. But sensorality with an S has a temper, right? My pool table's not going to get mad no matter what happens to it. Logic/operations. Again, we pointed out integration and segregation are natural opposites. We can make some sort of modification to a natural opposite, meaning, right, we talk about centers don't have distinct, unique opposites. And then we talk about how there is no symmetry, everything is completely unique, very, very fundamentally and intuitively. And so, like, do words have complete natural opposites? They kind of do, they should, or they might not, but like, this is kind of what we're playing around with all of these numeric statements about what I've done with the proofing, trying to figure it out, and I don't really care about the results, but just trying to get to the next axiom for my research. But then we can expand that. We have increasing operators and decreasing operators, right? Addition is the same as aggregation. If you aggregate something, you're adding. Aggregation is accumulation. If you accumulate, you're adding. So aggregation can be an opposite of integration. So what's going on here? Right? Logically, clearly that's consistent, what the words mean. But like, what is the natural opposite? Is there a natural opposite? Is the natural opposite the same syllability? Does it have 5 syllables to 5 syllables? Is it 4 syllables to 5 syllables? Is it 3 to 5? Is it 5 to 2? Why? How many? And why? These relationships are certainly out there. But notice how, so now what can we say linguistically, right? We have integration, just the words you hear every day in math class. Integration, addition, subtraction, division. So what's the odd one out there, right? They all end in that shun, the species, exponentiation, segregation, integration, addition, subtraction, division. And so again, we talk really intimately why the division is your first kind of operator, or the first thing you're doing. When you speciate, you divide. But division is clearly linguistically different than the other operators. And then we talked about how when you have a complete set or complete rule or a complete categorization or complete classification, there are no exceptions. So what is going on with here? Another bit of evidence, what do we do with it? Speciality is exceptional. And then we just said there's no exceptions. So sensorality is not exceptional. Right? Speciality proliferates, sensorality does not. And mentality is a mindset. Again, connecting these integrated words, clear base with prefix and suffix, to phrasing now. You know, I don't like to do the dichotomistic pairing with more than one word because the amount of logic, I do it sometimes, but the amount of logic that comes with it's a lot. But connecting, because like I said, we're pairing just cliches basically together. And we're just reducing that logic and showing you how language is consistent. But I've already done this. so we just got to keep plugging forward. But what is a mindset, right? Think of that word, a mindset. Like, again, horseshoes and hand grenades. You just throw a couple words together and people think of mind and they have this image and then think of set and then think of this image or intuition and it just kind of makes sense, I guess. Sensorality redacts, right? Clearly you have action, reaction, redaction, still action. but you know, if you're censoring something, you're redacting, you're classifying. What is the relationship of tension and entropy? Right? Entropy is this classification of energy of a system that cannot be used to do work. So tension contains or stores all of the non-entropic energy. Tension is inversely proportional to entropy. If something's really tight, if you have a coil and you're turning it up really, really tight, you're storing that energy. So it's more ordered, it's more stable, and you're condensing it. So I would say pretty tentatively, certainly not as definitively as the other ones were trivial, but tension is inversely proportional to entropy. We'll stay with that for now. Another pairing, the dichotomistic pairs that I point out without other explanation are just because they're interesting, showing you a base related to another form of the word that you probably didn't connect, such as horizon and horizontal. Right? If you're looking at the event horizon, you're intuitively referencing to the horizontal, to the left to right, the right to left, the width of our dimensionality. Happiness is proportional to cleanliness. And so when I'm doing these derivations, like slogans pop out. For example, it's like I couldn't sit down and do this derivation and say, you know, I'm going to make a slogan for Taco Bell, just picking a random company, and then have this derivation where it's like the logic and the consistency and the novelty is such that like it would be like a slogan. And so people don't think of mathematical theorems as being like brandable slogans, but there's very clear parts of my derivation where it's like I can't pick to derive a slogan for Taco Bell, but there's verbiage and iterations of language where it's like very clear, like this would be a very good marketing slogan because it's a condensation of language. And so it's like the amount of things that this extends to is tremendous. But this is one of them. It's a physical proportionality. Trivially, happiness is proportional to cleanliness. Do you physically feel better if the environment you live in is cleaner because it's more ordered? It's fundamentally axiomatic. Momentum is proportional to sentiment. Go to any sporting event, look at all the fans cheering when your team goes the other way, and then the crowd goes silent. That's when the momentum changes. Momentum is proportional to sentiment. Trivially true. Biased is related to based with an S. You just remove the I. So again, with speciality and special, there was something very intimate or fundamental to remove that letter I from speciality to special. And it was like the I or the sound E, something happened there. But we remove the I from biased and you get the word based. Another pairing of words you probably haven't related. Speciality is infrequent. Right, the more special, the more exceptional you are, the less frequent you are. You can apply that directly to your prime numbers on your number line. Vibration titrates, right? Titration, I forget what it actually literally means, but vibrate, titrate, I believe it's like neutralization. You're testing like the pH of a solution. But titration, obviously, is a form of vibration, which is obviously a super specific ontological word for chemistry. I put in ensore, E-E-N-S-O-R-E, and the last one is a conjecture of kind of like this final form But again, remember, I'm proving every single step. It would be so easy for me just to conjecture my way through it, but it's not rigorous. And so, but now think of the syllability, again, preserving the pronunciation. Ensore. E-E-N-S-O-R-E. Does that sound like any other word you've heard? Ensore. Ensore. I'm going to ensore the door. I raise my hand to get an ensore. Answer. And so, yeah, that's the syllability. I can't show it. Like, I make these jumps where it's like it's not clear in any way as to why these things are related. But now we're pairing this word form that doesn't even exist to answer, which everyone knows what it is, but it's the same syllability, just modified. Ensore, answer. So it's like something's going on there. But I do this stuff instinctually. That's not to say that, look at me, it's like I can't articulate all of these things because it's a fucking new math subject that I derived and it's all in my head and you guys won't fucking interact with me. A point joins lines. Lines intersect at points. So, again, just pointing out more logically true things about mathematical objects, lines, points, angles, triangles. I'm going to cut this episode here, moving on.